Yeah, hi everyone. Are we live right now? So can you guys hear us? Let me open the chat. Yeah. Uh, so if we are doing good, if everybody could see us and hear us, please type some like a hi in chat so we are sure that everything is doing good. Okay, so yeah, great. So we are here together with uh, some great guys from the ASO industry. Oh, so many people is writing on the chat here. Hi everyone. Uh, Here together, it's myself. My name is Ilia, as you maybe know already. I'm from AppFollow, working as a head of ASO in the AppFollow. Also here is Thomas from the. Actually, I guess it's a freelance mobile growth consultant. And Simon or Simon, sorry.
Hey guys,
It's a,
Simon.
it's a Simon. Okay, it's a Simon from the AppTweak. It's the ASO expert at AppTweak, and the Francesca from the Bending Spoons is the head of ASO in
Hello,
this
everybody.
company. So we are together here to discuss what's happened in ASO this year. So many things happened. Actually, most of them were the store bugs or some algorithm changes, but maybe something good happened. And also, we would like to discuss what should we wait in the next year, like. Uh, uh, what stories we'll do and what metrics maybe we should rely on the next year and what channels will be important next year. So as we talked about some of the retro from the 2019, so let's start with, I guess, with some important things happened this year. So for me, as I told, it's lots of bugs in the App Store and Google Play, and one weekend I was like doing nothing and decided to create my website with appstoredisconnect.com with store bugs because we are tired of writing down all their bugs and tracking all them, so what's happening in the stores. So for me this year in the ASO is just the year of store bugs. So maybe you guys have another opinion, maybe something good happened with the ASO this year. So as maybe Simon, maybe as you are working this ASO every day, so maybe you can start sharing your thoughts about this.
Sure. Well, I agree there were a lot of bugs this year in the store. But I would say otherwise in terms of pure changes and features Apple or Google tried to bring, there was not really one major change that everybody was talking about, but rather several kind of smaller changes, and everyone had a different thing that affected them most importantly. So for instance, I think some companies really looked into Arabic and Hebrew being released for iOS. Having these languages in the App Store is definitely going to change how certain companies do business in the MENA region, for instance. And otherwise, I feel like we're starting to see more and more both stores actually go towards more recommendation, whether it's Google Play adding editorial stories or just Apple bringing more and more content, more stories showing in the search results and not just in browse. So yeah, I think there's a lot going on, and we're still waiting for both stores to stabilize on what they want to deliver to users.
Yeah, agreed. So these things about the browse channel and the stories in the search results, and maybe you guys see the new search page in the App Store. It's just not the search anymore. It's just the recommended apps
Yeah.
there. So have you noticed some maybe changes in traffic from this? Maybe like a Francesca, maybe you saw some data there.
Yes, So actually, just to make it clear from the beginning, I'm head of ASO at Bending Spoons, where we are focused on iOS. So everything I will tell today is more related to iOS than Google Play. Yes, I agree. 2019 was a mixed feeling year because sometimes it's better not to have a bad news than having a bad news. So it's better no news than bad news. At the same time, we had a lot of little bad news about bugs. I agree. And then something I want to mention is also that at the beginning of the year, there was Australia that stopped indexing for text on metadata as it used to do with together with Great Britain. And I think this was something that passed at the beginning, everybody was talking about, but then we stopped talking about. And I think especially for companies and ASO experts that are really, let's say, professional and they try to optimize everything they can, this has actually a big impact, especially in the long tail searches. And this is also something that we felt at Bending Spoons, since we have a lot of apps and we try to leverage as much as possible the long searches. Regarding the other topic that I think is the most important one and the one that will have of most of attention also next year is about what Simon was mentioning. So the direction, the store going from a search, from an organic search place to a more editorial and featuring place. We saw it with some apps actually. We have many apps in first position, also for very important searches. One of them is, for example, Splice, that is first for video editor in the US. And Apple decided to give us a gift with adding a feature story. And this is actually something that is very difficult to track down in terms of metrics. So what's the impact of an app in a first position? It's very difficult to say, especially because those featurings and those stories are quite new in the search page. So users are not really used to see them, and the fact that are not in all the locales also mean that Apple is trying to understand how to leverage this. I hope they will not use it for to make even more money without our promotion, even if it's possible in the future. And what actually surprised me was that the feature content is not anymore based on competition or on some transparent parameters, but actually is decided top down from the editorial team. This is something that might be good, but also is not really democratic, and I'm not sure that in the long term will push for competition. So with our apps in the top position, we saw an impact on this. I think was limited, could be worse. Maybe people are still skeptical about featuring apps and featuring stories, but for sure is a huge thing, especially because it's impacting first and second position that are, as everybody knows, that are the most important searches for an app.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed here that the stores started to recommend us some apps because they don't believe that we can find something we need, because App Store and Google Play is quite a mess with millions of apps. So talking about this, Thomas, as you are working, I know, with some new projects, maybe new apps, did you notice something really what affected most? What changes affected you most in this year? Like for the new projects? So
I'd say
maybe
the answer is
yeah.
probably I don't know, and that's the interesting thing. Like among all the change you mentioned, like this sort of blending between search and browse, because there is some browse stuff in search and there is some search stuff in browse. It would be awesome if we could actually look at it and understand it well. And the answer is, thanks to all this bug, we actually can't. So sometimes we try to figure it out, but it's actually made very complicated. So I'm not too sure which of this change really impacted me, good, bad, which apps got a bit lost. But for me, the big sort of this year, what it showed to me is that we're actually talking about it today. And for me, it's representative of how more mature this field is. Like the fact that maybe these bugs, there were just as many of them before, but we weren't advanced enough to see it. And for me, this is the change of the year, is everybody has leveled up. And in many sense, I mean, there was the first conferences, there's a lot more material, but basically for me, it's the people I talk to. Like before, it's like I was speaking Chinese to them, and I was feeling all alone when I was talking to other people. I was like, very few people who can understand advanced stuff. And now I'm the one who's lost. And you're asking me this, and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know, because first, it's beyond my understanding. I'm not good enough anymore. But also, like, there's so many people doing it right, and I think that's the awesome part. Like, okay, so there's lots of small change, there's lots of bugs that makes our life a nightmare. But I think it's really awesome that this year we get to that stage where there are so many people, whether it's how many people there are like today in the ASO Slack, at the conference, more content, more tools, investment, you name it. For me, that was the big change. Like it's a much more mature field. And I guess if you have asked these questions a year and a half ago, the amount of people who could answer or even understand it would have been too small to even make a webinar out of it. So I'm really glad it happened. But the answer to your question is I have no clue.
Okay, so I also proud of how many people are involving in the ASO and all these ASO conferences in Berlin and New York. It's really amazing that we see that people are finally getting the idea of ASO. But I guess for some of guys it can be too late, because when I just helping my friends with ASO earlier this month, I just realized that it's really hard to get the high positions like it nowadays, because all the search results are busy. I don't know, there are just search ads and feature stories and branded apps, and you just trying to find the keywords when you can fit inside the search results, but you can't. So which I don't know, maybe just like in Google Play, we have to pay to win, like buying search ads or something like this. So, and just jumping to the next thing we want to discuss here. So what will be in the future? Like maybe next year, I think that the browse thing will evolve. So as I told, stories don't want us to search anymore, because they sure that we can't find anything in the search, because it's so many similar and like when you're trying to find maybe some business tracker or task tracker, all apps are the same and you don't know what to choose. So they're just trying to recommend you things. So what do you guys think about this, the browse power? I told this way.
Maybe I'll take it. So I continue on where we got there. And I think for me, the natural like transition is that this role of working in ASO is getting broader and broader. It's
Absolutely.
much less about the keyword and much more about anything like relationship with Apple and the screenshot and the featuring and the ads that are very important. And I see it in terms of role change, how this change in the store, they are slowly changing the role of the ASO manager. And I see a lot of like, this year we started seeing like senior ASO manager role appearing more than before. And I think now it's more about, so name it, maybe it's going to be called ASO anyway, but like sort of the guy who makes the link between a lot of departments and more of monitoring the organics as a whole, and how do we connect that to UA and how do we speak to Apple. And it's sort of, the role is growing a lot bigger because the nature of the work has gotten so far away from just looking at keywords. And it's like you say, like, oh, how do I get better editorial? How I monitor better all these things? How the ads interact? And I think the role evolves because the situation evolves. And for me, this is going to be the big trend next year. Is it was already now, but like the role is about everything. And maybe ASO is not going to be even called ASO anymore. It's going to be, about. I think the name is still good because it's everything that's related to the store. It's just that when you mention ASO, people are way too much into keywords and conversion, and it's just not only that.
Yeah, I agreed. It's not only one. Actually, when we were talking about ASO, like maybe 2 years ago, it was just a keywords, and more keywords. So now a grid is like it's not keywords, it's screenshots, it's reviews, it's rankings and ratings and all this stuff. So maybe guys, Simon, maybe how did you change your strategies for working with like maybe you're working not only with keywords right now, maybe something else you're taking into account?
Yeah, I think now, as Thomas said, it's really about having a broad look. ASO is really App Store. It's not just keywords, and even I think keyword optimization is not going to stop, but the way it works is going to evolve. Especially when you look at what Google seems to be doing with what DeepMind released in terms of blog posts, these kind of things. It looks like keywords are still going to be important, but they're going to influence browse a bit as well. Instead of just saying keywords are for your search results and we're leaving the search as one of the priority vectors for people to find apps. And I think that also translates into what goes on in other industries in tech, like in SEO. Now we're having less SEO driving directly on one page and instead focusing more in SEO for zero click results by Google. So it's really something where this idea that the store or your search with Google is going to give you the answer immediately and not require you to click to go to a new website or open an app. All that seems to be the new trend, and I think it's definitely going to keep going in 2020.
Okay, yeah, that's a good point about zero-click search results in the Google search in the Google Web. So I guess the same thing we can talk about like it's in the regarding ASO, it's feature stories and suggestions. So Francesca, maybe you have some thoughts of how will you change your strategies in the next year?
Yes, actually, this is a very interesting topic, and I think I'm very curious actually to see what's going to happen, because what everybody said, I don't want to repeat it, but I agree with this with the direction in which the story is evolving. At the same time, I see more and more competition from branded app brands and all over the place, and those apps are taking a lot of space from organic, let's say, non-branded apps. This has a huge impact on how you do ASO, of course. So let's focus maybe on keyword optimization. Still, you must do it for sure. But more and more focus also on the brand as overall topic, let's say. But this is also something very unpredictable, and something that we have no power, no control on it. Then you really depend and rely on Apple and editorial teams, and sometimes also luck, I'm sure about it. So this is something more difficult to understand. While you can optimize for searches, then it's more difficult to understand how you can optimize as a brand itself. But I saw a huge trend, especially in the archetypes where we are focused on, toward brands, while the smaller, or let's say non-branded organic app, are getting smaller and smaller. Moreover, I think there will be a lot of integration between paid traffic and ASO, especially with PUA and possible some evolution of search ads especially in the Apple Store. I would be not surprised if there will be other ways to promote the app, and if Apple will try to put some space, additional visibility on the store. We already saw with some example in the Slack community of search ads changing and showing two different apps in the same search, actually. When you scroll down and up again from the searches, this is something actually new. And the fact that they release some APIs for search ads, I think is another proof that they are pushing in that direction. And this is actually something potentially good for ASO, because it means that you can really leverage much more into the details, how you optimize apps, and actually makes it even clearer how competition is getting tougher, and you have to really fight for the little percent on everything you can. So actually, it's true, we're getting more. There are more and more people doing this job properly, and it's getting exciting.
Yeah, agree. So the summary here is ASO is not only like the keywords, it's like everything that's connected with organic traffic, organic promotion. So even Google told us recently that even the crash rates are affecting your recommendations. So the more crashes you have for your Android app, the less recommendations you will get. So it's an answer to question of how to optimize for Google recommendations. So create a great app, create a app with like a 0.1% of crashes, and this way Google will recommend you higher. And also if your app will have like a good metrics like a retention rate or other stuff, Google will recommend you higher and more. And that's way you will optimize for organic traffic, for the browser organic traffic. So we have some questions here. It's yeah, I think similar apps section has a good potential for organic downloads. Actually, yes, I think that's the similar app section in the Google Play. Is a it's a next thing in ASO when you will get more and more downloads from the similar apps. For example, some of my just the travel apps got 50-50 downloads from the search and from the browse channels. So at the last year, it was the 80% of the downloads from the search channel. So it's a browse thing, it's evolving. And ASO is gradually becoming an internal part of analytics strategy. Of course, it's and some of the similar question I saw here.
There's one that say, how do you optimize for browse beside keywords,
Yeah.
from Luke, and I think you partly answer it when you summarized, which is that you have to be a lot more holistic, and in the sense that I'll make a parallel. Like if you take what was happening in paid acquisition 5 years ago, people are like, yeah, let's go for the maximum number of downloads and we'll see. And it's sort of the stores in organic and ASO were quite dumb, and so that would work. And I guess the paid UA community smartened up and realized that it was actually wrong. And today everybody's looking at return on ad spend, retention rate, and so on. So basically they went down the funnel. And I think what's really happening here in the last year and a half, and with Google clearly being ahead of Apple on this, is that the stores are taking the same way. And so like factoring the vitals, the crash rate, but what we see in Google is that what's becoming more and more important is not your metadata, but actually what your users are doing. And even more so, how are they behaving compared to your peers? Like it's really a relative criteria. It's not you need to achieve that level of crash, is you need to be better than your competitor on it. And I think here the answer of how to optimize for browse is stop looking at metadata that much, although it is still very important, but actually aim at higher quality apps, because the store are becoming a lot more smart about it, and they're looking at what's really happening inside your app. And just like paid UA did it 4 or 5 years ago, they're going down the funnel, and they're going down the funnel. Like it started with crash rate and and installation rate and stuff, but I think very soon, like long-term retention, monetization, happiness about, like lots of happiness about customer support and reviews and stuff are going to be a lot more important than they are today. And clearly Google has taken this path, but I can't see Apple not taking it. It might take a little while. I don't know if it's going to be next year, but for me, it's clear that the way to optimize for browse is start focusing a lot more on your app and a little bit less on the metadata, because on the metadata, there's just so many things you can do. And if you're fighting against a big brand, at the end of the day, you're going to lose. You just need to make a better app.
Yeah, that's the yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Go on.
I disagree a bit on the side that I don't think you should quit on the metadata, but just really think that metadata are also important for the browse section, and that you actually have to be smarter on your metadata, because what we've seen recently about the similar app, for instance, it's that Google is really working on this comparison between apps, trying to find who works best with who. And so it's, of course, going to be, in the end, do users actually click on your app when they see you in the similar apps? That's something that at AppTweak we've recently been working a lot on, to actually estimate how many views you get from a similar app. But to get this kind of view, to try to send signals to the algorithm, there's different methods that you can play on. And sometimes it's not even keywords, it can also be the icon, but keywords as well. It just, maybe if I'm Waze or Maps, I want to be, or if I know a lot of my users listen to music while driving and use Waze or Maps, then maybe this kind of small metadata would be interesting to say, if I have the possibility to say, you need to have music that goes without hurting your traffic, and so target apps that are not direct competitors, but instead that are complementary to what your own app does.
Yeah, so here, not to just completely forget about the metadata, you have to do it smarter. Yeah, agreed. Because maybe several years ago we just can put 4,000 symbols of description at the keyword missing in the Google Play and ranking high for every keyword there, and everything was just perfect. But now, if you got this description, you will get maybe couple of downloads, because Google will pessimize you because it says spammy description, and Google robots are becoming more smarter and smarter, and I'm afraid someday they will become really smart and stop all the black hat and gray hat things. But if several years ago we can just focus on the description and nothing else, but now, as Thomas said, we should think about the app itself, about the conversion rate, about the ratings, about all the reviews, about the crash rates, about it's all about being better than the competitor. So by being better, you will say Google robots like, hey, I'm better, please recommend me, not them. So it's time to optimize, like not for the people maybe, but for the robots. So we have to make anything to tell Google robots like that we are better, and then we'll get our browse traffic here. So
I'm always a bit radical, but of course Simon is right. It's a little bit of both. Like you need to be good at both things. Like I said it in a very extreme way because I thought that's not what people were expecting us to say. But of course you have to focus on the metadata. And I guess it illustrates also the point that we made before, that it's a lot more complex. Is you need to get like plus 1%. You need to be good at everything. Like it's not like you change that keyword and you wait. Is you need to work on all different things at the same time, which makes it a lot more complicated. In my opinion, also more exciting, but of course it's a bit of both. So they listen to Simon more than what I say, and basically work on everything in parallel.
So Francesca, maybe have anything to add here by the...
Yeah, I totally agree. Actually, also when I started working on ASO, I'm more, let's say, freshman than Thomas and Simon probably in this field, but I have been working still a lot, and we completely changed the way we are approaching ASO. This doesn't mean that we are not focusing on textual metadata or visual metadata anymore. I read some question where like, so should I stop optimizing for keywords? Of course not. But as the guys were mentioning, is a totally different approach. I think now, if you're a good ASO, you have to be complementary with the evolution of the product you're working on. So you are bringing some knowledge from the market, from what you see, from the trend you see in the market, and you bring them to the product team. And at the same time, you try to take what is good, has been built on the app, to promote it properly on the store. An example of this is what we are witnessing with search ads creative sets, for example. I think that potentially can be a very interesting tool, but it has too many limitations for now. And one thing that we see is that different sets of metadata perform tremendously differently on different searches. So you have to really understand what is at the core of your app, what are the searches you are targeting, and to do it in a much deeper way than just visual optimization or textual optimization as separate efforts. It has to be something all unique, all together. And for now, at least, I see that is actually difficult to be able to have an impact on the browsing. I hope it will, especially on iOS. I hope what Thomas was saying, that if you're good, and what you, Elia, were mentioning, if you're good for the robot, then you will be pushed up also by the robot in the stories and in the featuring. I hope we will go in that direction, because what I see so far is that if you are, let's say, friend of who is able to make the choices, then you will get more space. But it doesn't mean that is for sure the best app. I'm sure is the way Apple and Google are trying to move forward. But I think at the moment it's still a bit a mixed field, and we are not that we are not at that point yet. For sure, this is the direction where we are going.
Yeah, agreed. So, and as I see, Apple and Google also are trying to maybe make a better experience for their users. So not just suggesting every app you create like as this simple Flappy Bird clones or something like this. They just want to for their users to download a really good apps like and that's why you have to make your app it's really good and trying to make something that Google and Apple will recommend you. So I guess this is the key factor of the ranking high and getting more downloads for the next year. And something for this year, as we are talking about the iOS, like earlier with the release of iOS 13, there was some maybe some good thing actually for me as a user. It's a great thing. I'm talking about the easier subscription management. So earlier in the iOS 12 and even maybe 10, we had to really don't know, but somewhere in the App Store to cancel our subscriptions and to change them, and people got charged for nothing, like for these great apps with $20 per week monetizations. So now it's much more easier to cancel your subscriptions, and we saw some reports that lots of like handmade apps are suffering from this. Maybe you guys have some information, like as Simon and Francesca, as you're working with some apps with subscriptions, maybe how it affected the revenues, or maybe some retention rates or rankings or anything else.
Maybe I can take that one. I work with a lot of subscription apps, and like, of course, a lot of them got hurt with this change, which I think is good, like, because at the end it's for the user, and I feel like with the previous scheme, they would raise subscription fatigue and people would get pissed about being charged and then lose trust. And eventually, I think it's a great change. And despite the fact that it affected negatively several of the apps I work with, what I'm seeing is that Apple really did it pretty well, in the sense that the more pushy were the app, the more they're suffering. So you mentioned like this weekly scam apps, they took a really big toll. And then I look at my different client and I realized that the more aggressive they were with the subscription and the more they were hit, which on the long term is good because it means it benefit the ones who are like software conversion and not being so tricky with people about the wording and the UX and all, and more about the value prop. So I guess on the short term, it's actually a very big problem, but on the long term, it just aim at just bringing better value for the user. And I think it's gonna be a good thing as it weeds out the bad player. In the short term, it's a problem for a lot of apps for sure. Like it's a big problem.
If I can complete what Thomas is saying, I totally agree on having, let's say, a more short and long-term approach to an answer to this. Our apps, most of them also are subscription-based. I think we didn't suffer a tremendous impact. So I don't know if it's good because maybe we were not so aggressive or because the products are good. But I'm happy it was not a terrible situation. At the same time, I'm happy actually that Apple went in this direction because it helps developers actually to focus on what really the user needs and what the user is willing to pay for. Because in that direction, you are sure that the users you have and the subscriber you have are actually more committed, are more happy about your service. So you start focusing on them and what they ask from you, what they want you to improve and to implement, and you're not focusing on potential false metrics of retention or on users that are actually not using the service anymore. So I think for us it's actually an opportunity to improve even further our products because the metrics we see from the committed users are the most interesting one and are the ones that we have to focus in order to improve even further our products. So actually this I think was a very interesting switch for Apple and is providing a lot of good impact I think on the store. Also because a lot of users were really scared about this subscription service. So after they got used to it with Netflix and Spotify and so on and so forth, then with the apps, since apps are digital and are web, we used to think that they are for free. So to see the subscription was users are very skeptical at the beginning. But if there is an app, it means that there are people working behind it, and it's like if you go in a bookshop and you pay for it. Also, if you use an app, you should be happy to contribute to the development of that. And I think this is a good direction in order to make people more aware and at ease to contribute for the apps they are using, and only for those that they think they have some value behind it.
Yeah, so it's just a continuous thing of cleaning the app store from these scammy apps. So just a long time playing from the stores when they just cleaning the shelves. So from this 2 weeks astrology apps or something like the calendar apps. And so, Simon, do you have anything to add here? What was the biggest impact actually for you from the iOS 13?
I think the biggest impact was really for me as a user because on pure ASO, on the ASO side, well, for sure it impacted the category rankings, especially when you looked at top grossing. But I didn't feel there was so much of a change in search results, for instance. But we did. That was mostly because everybody got hurt, and those who got hurt less were actually the good ones. And no one would really complain about this because they thought, well, okay, this is hurting me in the short term, but in the long term, those are users I would have eventually lost. These are potentially users who would leave bad reviews. And I know that if someone else is losing more, it's because they were doing some gray or black hat things just to make more money. So it doesn't really impact that much ASO in my opinion, but on a more broader scale, getting apps to work on the good side of growing your business, I think it's a really good thing that Apple finally did this change.
Maybe
Yeah.
a tiny change on ASO. I admit it's a bit unrelated, although we said it's about like everything, but maybe a tiny change for me is in the past, I was actually frightened to put the subscription in the results, like to put the promoted IAP as a subscription, because I was thinking like, oh, people are gonna see straight up that my subscription is worth $59.99 or $99.99 or whatever price it is. And I was like, it's good because I'm gaining visibility in the store, but at the same time, do I really want people to see that there is a subscription? They might be frightened because they got scammed by whoever. They're going to see the price. So I was very, very cautious about the promoted IAP. And with this change, I think like the subscription got a lot more legit, and there's not a lot of reason not to do it because you're going to occupy space, and that this fear should go down because of this cleanup that happened. But I'm stretching to find a relationship to ASO just to make my point that I had to disagree with Simon at some point of this webinar.
Yeah, actually, I just remember that I saw for some of the branded search terms, like it's an app on the first search position, then on the second it is a feature story, and then on the third it's a promoted in-app from this app. So it's just the free position in the store, it's just occupied by one app, and I tried to find the search ads with this app, but I failed there. So it's just yeah, for the occupying space, it's just a great idea to use the promoted in-apps there. So yeah,
Ilia,
yeah.
because since we were talking about iOS 13, I want also to mention something Simon said at the beginning, actually, about Arabic and Hebrew as well. For example, languages. I think this is a very important change, actually, that was available and more technical, let's say, to speak for ASO. And I think this could be actually something very interesting. The apps that we localized, actually, we received a pretty interesting boost, because so far, if you wanted to localize for Arabic, you had to use Great Britain or other locales. So finally, you can do it properly with Arabic locale, and this actually has a huge impact on our Arabic countries. And I think this is something going again in the direction of making ASO and the apps more professional, better, and easier for the users to see. Something else also I wanted to discuss and to understand also from the other guys what they see was the dark mode, that basically was something actually super nice on the mobile, and maybe it looks like something huge. And so the rules of the game are not changing, but now you have also to make sure that your screenshot converts better, not only on the white mode, but also on the dark mode. And you have to compare it not anymore with the version of the screenshots you have, but potentially also with the apps around you, because they may be more or less visible than you. So actually, I think this is still an interesting change from Apple. I think it's a super nice experience, the dark mode. From ASO, it makes it even more difficult to understand how to optimize for visual metadata. I think testing is difficult, but for me, I think was something very interesting to see, and something more even more interesting to try new creative, some totally new approaches, something that maybe you didn't try before, and now you want to do. For example, again, our Splice app, and I feel a little ashamed. If you look at the page in the US store, now we have a banner that is super cool with the white mode, but on the dark mode actually it looks like broken.
Like,
And
sorry, did you have this gradient from like color image to the white one?
no, let
It's
me show you.
these top images looks amazing on the white screen. And
No,
just
I don't know if you can see it. So
Yeah,
basically,
yeah,
there was the white, see, and
yeah,
basically
that's white on
on
the
exactly
lower. Yeah,
on the white
uh,
background was amazing, because there was this snowball coming out, and now we have to change it, but it's not so straightforward, let's say.
I agree. I love it, and it's very challenging, like to cater for both things. I guess here there's a bit of a wish list that this just appeared, but I hope that next year there are two things that may happen. They might not, but Like one is that maybe we could upload one for dark mode and the other one for white mode. Google might do this. Like, I'm not sure about Apple, but Google at some point they might do it, just like the way they do custom listing and so on. Because at the end, it's really challenging from a design point of view to find the ideal of both. Like the ideal is to have one of each. And the other one is give us data. The problem is like, oh, I'm changing it and I'm looking at the overall conversion rate, but maybe we're missing out that it went plus 30% on dark mode and minus 20% on white mode. We don't even know how many people are using one and the other. So it's actually really, really hard to find a balance in there. I'm not sure they're going to start sharing a lot of data. Maybe at least generic, like, oh, dark mode is 1/3 of user or whatever. But the ideal would be to enable us to upload one for each, because it's really hard to make the best for both cases. There are some creative ideas, but sorry.
We should make a banner with give us data near the Apple office. So
No,
and
no,
I
no.
guess
Yes,
Thomas,
give us reliable data. Give us reliable data.
yeah, absolutely.
Thomas, sorry guys, but Thomas, I have to tell you, apparently we can really agree on some things, because I was about to make the same points. Just to add a bit, I would say the data especially would be very important, because dark mode is not just the App Store. It's also starting to be something for more and more apps, and having the data would be great. Especially if you could customize, that would be even more awesome, because that way you could also show in dark mode that your app supports dark mode, and keep light mode with your old build.
Yeah, so that's so many things we want to change here. And actually we have a couple of questions about localization there. So, but before we discuss this thing, did you guys hear anything about the Apple Watch App Store? Did you know that Apple released the Apple Watch App Store with iOS 13 and the Watch OS 6?
Did anyone hear about the watch at all anyway?
So I just tried it once on the WatchOS beta, and I see that as absolutely, I don't know how to use it. I don't know when and where should I use the App Store from my watches. So how should I optimize for the watch? And okay, and one more thing, I got it, that Thomas wants us to upload. We're already uploading about 1,000 of screenshots for the new app for all the locales in the App Store. And Thomas wants us to upload 1,000 more to the dark mode.
You have it automated anyway, so you have to work. I mean, you have to justify why you're working. I don't see the problem.
Yeah, of course I have it. The fast lane automation, that's absolutely amazing. And regarding localization, actually, we had our travel apps we localized to Arabic about in 2016. We just make the copy of the bundle. It's just the same app, the same icons, same screenshots, but with Arabic title. We got some rejections there, so we changed the icon, we changed the screenshots, and it was just doing good. And now it's a great thing that we can just put the Arabic titles and the Hebrew titles in the App Store. And so we have some questions here about the localization, like how useful is localization. Actually, I, by myself, was talking about localization like all the time I was doing ASO. Like I started doing ASO with localization. Actually, I came to ASO from the localization. So it's absolutely, I guess, impossible for the new apps to rank high in the United States, for example. We know that the United States has all the money in the App Store, but it's almost impossible to rank high. So we have to select the other countries. We have to, for example, it's like a new locales in the App Store, maybe some Arabic locales, and try to gain some authority, from the App Store. And maybe then they will allow us to rank higher. So. And I'm happy that finally people are talking about localization. So it's a thing, and we understand that we should make the localized keywords and the title. And I guess all of you guys are doing this for the years already. I guess maybe there's something that we can change in the localization right now.
I can start from this if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah, given that we have a big portfolio, I think we are it's a good question for us. And if there are competitors, then please don't focus on localization. No, but I'm just joking. Actually, localization is super important, and I think for different point of view. The first one is itself download. Basically, you are able to push up downloads by 30 to 100% when you localize properly on a locale. Depends on what's your baseline and how good you are in localizing. So I think it's really important. And moreover, it's not only the extra download you get, but also the quality of those downloads and potentially the quality of the users that will try to use your app and will stay and retain to your app. Again, I'm happy that today we are talking again and again about apps getting better and better products, more professional, more developed, with attention to every single detail, and because this ultimately will bring to much higher value for the user. So an app that is localized also in the small locale, for example, Finland, like ASO, and also potentially inside the app and everything, for sure is a product that is much more defined and worked in the detail than an app is just there, not localized and abandoned on the store. So localization is good, not only to boost downloads, but also to prove that you are creating a good product. And potentially in the long term, this can also bring you in a good position with Apple, because you show that actually you are able to create great products. Of course, in terms of ROI, that is a good metric to have a look at. You can look at it not only in the specific locale, but also as an overall result. Of course, if you are able to put you in a better position for browsing and also for featuring also in other locales, so in the US, then it's something that you should take into account. And of course, try to be as efficient as possible in localizing for the small locales where you need some external help potentially, or you are not super at ease with those languages. So of course, pay attention to the investment you do, but taking into consideration the countries where you want to do it, because there is a lot of upside localizing properly an app.
I agree with most of that. If I can complete, I'd say it's also depending on your app, of course, but also your capability. And I've got one recent example, and I don't mean to contradict you entirely, but basically what we did is we removed a lot of small locales where we were seeing that even though we were localized there was not a lot of volume of activity. And I see one of the questions here say that the general assumption that most people understand English may be incorrect. And here the thing is, what we removed was Finland, like Finnish, Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish, or yeah, Danish. Okay. And basically what we noticed is we saw zero change in the quantity of traffic, and we saw zero change in the quality of traffic. But the thing is that all this effort that we were doing in this case, that was a fairly small team. Like we were doing like 30, 40 localization, and we're basically doing them all very poorly. We bring all this time and money of translating stuff into bringing up the quality of translation in countries where it actually does matter a lot to us, like Brazilian Portuguese, Indonesian is very relevant for that particular app. And before it was just like, yeah, okay, let's just translate this and that's it, and so on. And basically by choosing to put more effort there or there, we did so like big uplift where we put focus on more quality, but in some country the downlift was not there. And so localize, yeah, totally, but maybe keep in mind to shoot where it's worse for you, and also that it's not only, oh, do it in every country you can, no matter what. It's rather about do it where you can and do it right. If you can do it right everywhere because you've got a big team and resources, definitely do it. If you don't, choose your battles. And choosing your battles is doing it right rather than doing it everywhere, in my opinion.
Yeah, agreed. So it's almost not necessary to localize, for example, to Swedish for your app, just if you're not doing the Swedish car rental or bike rental, something like this, then you have to localize to Swedish. But other countries like Brazil or China or maybe Japan, South Korea, almost all Asian countries, they just Thailand maybe, they don't speak English. So like for example in Thailand there are I don't know, not so many people speaks English, so it's important to let them find your app. So maybe they want to download your app, maybe they want to play your game or like spend some money in your app, but they can't find it because it's not localized. So, and almost everything is relevant to the like for the Europe countries like the Italy or Spain, in the on the south regions when people also don't know English, they just speak their languages and. Maybe when I try to bought some pizza on the gas station, it just I try to explain for 20 minutes that I want this pizza and this Coke. So and these guys on the gas station, maybe they want to play your game, but they can't find it in the store. So this is what localization is used to. So we have another question here. What about localization specifically with keywords? Uh, yeah, if you got some keywords that make sense only in English, like left them in the, for example, if we are talking about the App Store, leave them in the UK, English UK, and it will be indexing worldwide. So it's not a big deal, but just use only relevant localized keywords
But that's
in the
what
locales.
that's what localization is all about. Like you're
Yeah.
not here to translate your English keyword. You're here to find out how do people locally search for my vertical. And I think that's the message. Like don't go and translate your English keyword. That's actually the crappiest way of doing it. But rather like interview people, look at the reviews, do your own research, and say how are these people different? Like, it's not only the word and the language, the culture are different. Some people look in a completely different way than in your own country, and that's what localization is all about. So in this case, don't try to force it. If that keyword only makes sense in English, or you put it in English, and then you look at what's only existing there that I never thought about because I'm not Thai or Indonesian or whatever it is.
Yeah, actually, it called not like a translation and localization. It called like a smart word that I tried to pronounce like a internationalization. So sorry for for this. It's a complete work with searching for the keywords, adapting the screenshots, adapting the icons. So it's a all in the same. Okay,
And
so we
I
just
I would
yeah.
say it's even more than that. When Thomas was speaking of uh, choosing which country you should localize for, I think you should also think, is my app translated for this country before choosing to localize? Because sometimes you have apps who want to go attack all the markets all at once. But if you start having a message in the store in the local language, and once your user installs the app and opens it for the first time, he sees only English, if he doesn't speak the language that well, he will quit very soon. That will hurt both your reputation locally and your ASO.
Yeah, actually there are
Ratings, everything. Yeah,
yeah.
there's definitely a negative impact there.
There are two strategies available. Like you can just check by the doing the localization of keywords and title. You can just check if there are any traffic in the country. So if you started getting some installs, then you have to localize. But of course, it's not working for the like if you are doing the word games. For example, it's absolutely useless to localize, for example, word games to the Chinese if you don't have the Chinese words in your game. So it depends. Absolutely, you're right, Simon, that people can delete your app after opening it if they don't see the localized interface. But so you have to select your strategy depends on your app category and on your needs.
I'll
Okay.
add a little
Yeah.
something for the wish list, which is I really wish that I could see the data of people crossing country and local. Like, because in some countries it's pretty obvious, like that there's not so many people who speak Thai outside of Thailand. But in some case, it's like not clear at all, especially with, I don't know, Latin American Spanish or country like Switzerland, where there's a bunch of different language going in the country. and the data we're working on is really shit to interpret what's happening there. So you proxy it a little bit, but I really wish at some point we'll have country data, local data, and that we can cross each other and see, oh, look, I don't know, the Vietnamese expat, they're behaving very differently, or whatever case it is. And today, this is a hard thing to assess in some specific case. Like in some cases it's clear, like Swedish or whatever, but in some cases it's really tough to assess.
Yeah, so talking about the wishes, so we spent I guess a great hour here, and so the one big wish I guess that we have for Apple and Google just giving us more reliable data, so that we can make the smart decisions based on data, but unfortunately now we can't make it because of this attribution bugs in the App Store and some random numbers instead of downloads in the Google Play Store. But so just to finish our discussion, guys, maybe have anything else, just maybe someday we will see to make our jobs easier, to make not so nervous maybe.
Beside proper data, the one thing I really wish to have on the wish list is that what makes the apps discovery very different to website or other thing is that there is this bottleneck here that everybody has to see the same thing. And just the same way that Google did the custom listing for some language, I hope that at some point I can do custom journey and say, okay, these people, I'm going to showcase this feature rather than this feature, because I know that they were coming from this bro story, and so they are interested in this. Or I know they were coming from this paid campaign or from this thing, or I've got an influencer or whatever. And having like custom listing where I could slightly adjust, one would give us a tool to do a lot more A/B test. And second would be a better user experience to actually fit to what you want. You could have, or even deep link and then onboard them differently. So that's the big thing on my wish list. Like besides proper data, which we all want, like in terms of experience, I think that would be a win for the user and that would be a win for the developer.
Yeah, so actually maybe you see that Google Play is testing like different different app pages for different states, like when the app was installed, but when the app is not installed,
Yeah.
when the app is installed. So that would be great to see same thing for the App Store, as we know that the huge part of the installs are reinstalls. So people are just coming back to our apps, to our games, that are reinstalling them. So we would like to show them like another screenshots, another like a maybe icons and titles. So what do you think, guys? Simon, Francesca?
Francesco, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, what
Yeah,
else can we add?
yes.
Just a couple of wishes here.
Yeah, I have a long list, but I have to say that on top of my list, apart from the fixing the bugs, of course, there are two things that actually one is quite doable, I think, especially for Apple's. Google is already doing that, and is to providing a tool for developers to actually improve and do some A/B testing of visual metadata. This is something that Google Play is already doing. I don't know why Apple is not doing yet, since they're already starting to do something with creative sets and so on and so forth. So I think that could be a natural step. That would be something I think doable, and I wish that we will have it in the future, because this would be a way for a developer to significantly improve visual optimization. And another thing would be nice to have is more transparency and competition on the featurings. Let's say that there is the first result on search video editor or photo editor or whatever, fitness, whatever you want. Why there is a specific app over there and why it doesn't change almost any time. I think on this is something that there is not a lot of transparency and it's not clear why an app is over there and there is not another one. So that would be nice also to be able to try to promote your app and to put it in competition. And then if your app is showing some metrics, then you will deserve to get some visibility on the spot.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess, yeah, go on, Simon, please.
Yeah, no, my wish is also about transparency, but I would say even broader. I think Thomas will know exactly where I'm coming from, but I was very amused. I think in the middle of the year, Apple released a statement about its own apps competing with others, and how they were now fixing how their apps were so much better in the algorithm. And I was actually a bit amused by how Apple announces, because it's good that they're finally listening to critics saying it's unfair and not even good for the user that 5 Apple apps can show in the search results instead of 5 competitors for the same thing. But what they didn't say is how they were fixing it, or exactly what were the rules. They were just saying we're going to add a penalty on our own apps uh, to level the playing field. But I think it would have been much more interesting if they could say, well, we have fixed this parameter of the algorithm because it was giving us an unfair advantage.
Yeah, but I heard about this statement as well, but the small spoiler alert here is nothing changed. Apple
Yeah.
apps are still ranking high for the like general terms like music, weather, and other stuff. So yeah, finally, if anybody here from Apple or Google maybe listening to us, we guys want to more reliable data and more transparency to make some thoughts, make some analysis of the ASO and downloads. So I guess thank you guys all for the discussion, for the insights. It was great to having you all here, and thank you our guests for joining us today, for listening. I hope you have some insight to start the ASO, how it's called the 2020 year or 2020. It's a little bit complicated. Okay, so thank you so much, and hope you have a great evening and have a great month and have a great vacation there, Thomas. Thank
See
you,
you guys.
guys. Bye bye.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye.
Thank you.
See you.
Bye.